Okay, so I did a little audio that has some more other things in it, but at the end it has me reading from the preceptor book about the spiritual training of women. I thought it'd be good for women to know specifically. And I'm going to post this here on the Gratefullness Meditation channel, and hopefully I have some folder. I might have to create a new folder or playlist for things that are essential to the practice, but I thought I have that somewhere. And then the next part is the 9 o'clock prayer. I'm going to read from that. I've already done a video about that, but I'll do a second one. The coming whatever, I'll probably do the audio today. But those will be two separate videos. And so this video will go up. Today's Tuesday, January 10th. I've already placed a video up for a sitting. So all of those things, all of the above. The one thing I want to add to it, when a preceptor does work, you have to invite the divine master in. There has to be this sense of the divine master is working through me. I'm being a conduit. And the work won't be successful otherwise. And so when that thought is there, you need that thought for the transmission of flow and for the work to be successful. And even if you don't have that thought, just by sort of volunteering for this work, it happens automatically, but it's always better when you cooperate. And so most of these things that he's talking about would be dealt with if you do that. Like, and you're sensitive, and you're because you're in communion with, you're communicating with the divine essence. And so you will be instructed what to do. And it just matters your sensitivity to be able to figure those things out. So I just want to preface this things about spiritual training, that if you're doing that, the other things, and just like with anything else in Sahaj Marg, if you're doing it in thought of constant remembrance, the practice of constant remembrance, which I need to talk about, that should be a third video. Hopefully I'll remember to do that. If I don't get to the comments here as quickly as my other channel, but in a couple of weeks I don't make a video on constant remembrance, people can, mention it to me so it remind me. Anyways, without further ado, here's the audio. Okay, brothers and sisters, today's Monday, June 9th. I made a video today for tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow's video that I started today. And I talk about a lot of things that have to do with, some of it's spiritual, some of it's just, stuff to do with some girl put the big, beautiful bill into ChatGTP, and then I asked Gemini about it, and then I asked Gemini to draw up a apocalyptic scenario based in worst case scenario of the implications of the big, beautiful bill. And it's pretty apocalyptic. So I'm going to put that whole video, that whole clip, that part of the video in the end of this video just to keep it here. Some of these things, it's, these videos just disappear after a while. But the Journey series is forever. So anyways, so let me, I'll add that. But I wanted to get to a few other things. So the first thing is, there's something I want to read for the Preceptor's Manual about the training of women spiritually. And also, I think I'll put this whole audio in as a separate video for the regular channel. And I won't do that tomorrow because tomorrow's Tuesday. I do the sitting, but maybe Wednesday. And so I'll have to maybe cut some of this out. I don't know. Like the first part's unnecessary. But anyways, I guess I give it the whole thing in there. I'm going to be reading from the book in a second. But before that, I thought I didn't sign up for any emails. I'm having internet problems. Fucking, I don't know what that's all about. My son called. They said they were going to get it done by, it's not ready. I'm a little bit disjointed since we haven't had internet all day, basically, since this morning. But they're supposed to get done by 5. It's now 7:30. And so anyways, let's me get into it. So I checked the emails, and, I blocked all this Heartfulness things, but I think I was still getting the Sai Sandesh, although I haven't got very many of them. But they've been showing up recently. Maybe they were spammed. I was getting them in my backup channel. The backup channel that used to be like a shit on Heartfulness channel. And, not the Gratefullness Meditation channel, but the other one. that I made just to expose Dodgy. Then they copyrighted me, and I said, "Fuck it, I'll just, I don't, I want to, I don't want to have to deal with this anyway." So, and I was still getting notifications there, but I don't open that channel as much, and I don't check the email very much there, and I don't read all the notifications. But one came to my inbox today, and what it said was they're doing some anniversary for Babaji, and they're doing it at the Shah Jahanpur ashram, and it's some long seminar they're doing there, and I don't know when exactly it was. Let me check on my phone. It says here, it's from June. I'm sorry, from January 23rd of January to 21st of February, and they're closing that ashram. So Babaji built this one ashram that was pretty nice for its day, but it's much smaller. That's back when they had hundreds of people. And so the ashram is fairly small. There weren't a lot of resources. It's all the way up in Shah Jahanpur. Now, it was very difficult for people to visit Babaji. He lived in the north part of India. You had to take long trains. I mean, it was one of these difficult journeys because it was very far away from New Delhi. And that was probably the city, that was where they mostly, New Delhi is one of the cities that they fly into. It's a big hub. And then usually people would get a train from there. And they usually show up around 2 a.m. I heard from all these Abhyasis who went to visit Babaji. And then Babaji had people stay at his house, and he had very, meager, he wouldn't take donations, and he had a very meager pension, and, he had, his food was very, simple food. And, people loved him and the energy that was there. And so it was great for them, but it was a tough trip. And it just wasn't very accessible. And as soon as he passed away, his kids fought Charji on the ashram, which was probably the best thing that could have happened, because Charji moved the headquarters to Chennai, where he lived in southern India. And northern India gets quite cold in the summer and really hot quite cold in the winter and really hot in the summer. And it's really it's kind of dirty. I mean, there was a lot of crime. It was just a not nice place, rural place, but kind of not a nice rural place. Charji once said, I didn't think there was a place worse than Shah Jahanpur, but then I went to Fatehgarh where Lalaji was born, and he said, lucky for me, I get Chennai. And Chennai was a big city, and it had Western things. It was the people were more used to seeing Western people, white people and people from foreign countries, because it's a bigger city and there was more accommodation. And Charji built a much nicer ashram that by the time that it was completed, the Abhyasis had already outgrown it. There was a meditation hall that seated 5,000 people. And so then they had to purchase some big areas, some big land areas, where they could have really big birthday bandaras there, where they would have, 20 to 50 to one time 80,000 people. And so that became the Kana ashram, where they have the world's biggest meditation center. And so what they're doing here is celebrating this gathering at Babaji's ashram. And there's nothing else there. There's not a lot of Abhyasis there. Babaji's family isn't really, they still are, many of them are still doing their own thing. Like they charge money to go visit his house. And the energy isn't the same. Like people go there, they don't feel the same as when Babaji was alive. The family was a kind of mess. The kids were like abusing their wives, and kids would beat them. And I mean, it was bad. Like it was, some weird shit went on with Babaji's house. And so, they had this lawsuit to try to get the ashram, and they lost after like 13 years. And Charji never went back there because it was so awful. He also, Charji, he was conducting Lalaji's birthday gathering or Babaji's or something, and they had another group of people that were in there with a separate mission giving separate sittings. So both gatherings were going on at the same time. And nobody was doing the other people's gathering, the kids, Babaji's kids. And so, it was a very ugly thing. Charji had gotten one of the kids a job at his place of work. I mean, he took care of the kid, and the kid totally turned on and was bad mouthing Chargy to his boss, and it caused a lot of problems for him, and it was the whole thing. And so Babaji's kids sucked, and the family sucked. It was a whole nightmare situation, and there's nothing there in Shah Jahanpur. And some people go take the long trip up there to the ashram, but I don't think there's much energy there. Maybe there's something, I don't know. But, it's not an easy track, and it's not something where, I mean, I don't know how they're going to accommodate all these people. Like, I don't think they have the infrastructure. They don't have the toilets. They're going to have a month-long gathering up there. And meanwhile, they have this mega ashram that's costing a fortune to maintain. That's like 1,000 acres in the world's biggest meditation hall in Kana. And it's during Lalaji's birthday. They're going to be celebrating Babaji's. It's the 50th anniversary of the ashram. That really isn't much of an ashram. That, Charji never revisited, and, because of everything that happened there, and, the whole thing. And so, it tempted me to go look at the YouTube channel and get some explanation, but I've resisted this far. I just don't like to tune into it, but, it brought up some story of the history of the thing that I thought was important to talk about. And so that's the first part. I'm going to stop here and then continue in a separate voiceover. That way I can do the video. I'll start with the greetings, brothers and sisters. Well, I guess maybe I can just continue on. I think that's kind of interesting. And so let me go to the book here. It's only 9 minutes long, and I'll do a little introduction. Anyways, let's move over to the book here. Okay, so I have to put the microphone on my chest. It's going to sound differently, and there might be some interference when I move around. But I thought this was kind of important to read. While transmitting to a lady, this is Preceptor's training of working with women. While transmitting to a lady, I must say all of these principles were evolved by my master. This is Charji talking, meaning Babaji, evolved by Babaji, and come from his heart for our benefit. There's going to be some reaction by some of the, feminist women from Europe and America. While transmitting to a lady, the preceptor should be careful that he does not sit face to face with the Abhyasi. The preceptor should be turned a little away from her. You see like this, a little angular. This applies only if the Abhyasi is a female and the preceptor is a male. Now if the preceptor is a female and the Abhyasi is a male. Then this does not. Because here is the power of the master being transmitted through the preceptor into the heart of the Abhyasi. This can create even greater problem. That woman takes the preceptor for the master and forms association with him, which would be even worse. So the technique is always to sit slightly angular, you see, so that it's like rays of the sun, over the top of the tropics or the equator. It's hot precisely because the rays of the sun are almost vertically over it. Here it is in angular so that the disruption of the sun's energy over the specific area. Therefore, you don't feel that the power of the sun is here. So it's to be able to transmit without imparting the full force of the transmission that this technique is adopted. Berta knows all about this because we have discussed it this even in 1972. Berta is a preceptor from Denmark. So let me talk a little bit about this. So when I was made a preceptor, this guy, the senior guy, Don Savarin, pulled me over and he told me about this, and he said that, women have more of a tendency, their hearts are different from men, and they have more predisposition towards love. And so you don't want that love to become non-spiritual or something of a, like a woman falling, like one of the Abhyasis falling in love with you or something like this. I think this has been something that wasn't a big problem, but just that the woman's heart is different. And so if a man's giving her sitting, her heart can open up, and this could lead to other things, her, and this, Babaji says, this attachment being formed with the preceptor. So that's the first part, and that's not really the part that I thought was important, but I thought I would just read that. Before commencing the transmission, the preceptor should form the thought that God has created women, and the elements which make up her composition are being transformed into a divine state. The transmission should be soft and not forceful in nature. In the case of women, male preceptors should remember to be as gentle as possible with their transmission, as subtle as possible, because then the effect is more spiritual, and the transmission is tinged with materiality. It produces often a more material result. This is undesirable because the transmission is it can have more force to it. And it takes a while to refine your ability to let the transmission flow through you. And women's hearts are more delicate than a man's heart. And so there are all these things that are specific to women because being a potential mom, having a mom inside of them and a mother's heart, they have more capacity for love and are more capacity for attachment, like the attachment to the children and, the maternal instincts. And so all these things are, relatively important. Ladies should not be detained at the point of the heart, the first point of the heart, longer than necessary, but she may move quickly through the intermediate region to the Atma point, or the soul point. That's point 2, cleaning everything as thoroughly as possible. It's not desirable for women to be awakened in this point because, again, their spiritual awakening, only at that point in their spiritual awakening is being diverted towards the mundane existence. So to prevent that, they are to be moved quickly to the Atma chakra. This, again, is something which full preceptors should do because at the moment, provisional preceptors lack the ability to shift the approach from one point to the other. Under no circumstances, these are all bold parts. The part I just read you wasn't, but bold, it says, under no circumstance should force-field transmission be given to ladies. This is very important. And D, very important for men. Ladies should be induced to love their husbands and look after their families and household affairs with due attention to that. So here he says, you see, Babaji was always enormously fond of what we shall call the better half of the human race. In India, we call women the better half. They have to be protected, cherished, nourished, and able to grow. They are fragile, not physically, because often they are stronger than the men. It may be in India, that's a common thing, I guess. Some of the women are bigger than the men in India. They are fragile in their inner essence. It's like Babaji used to take the example of a candle flame, which is easily blown out, yet is the candle that gives light. In India, there's this tradition that the wife is the Lakshmi of the house. She brings with her not only light and illumination, but the spiritual wealth. The Indian tradition, let me just explain the Lakshmi. So Lakshmi is the god of wealth and blessings. Charji's mother was considered the Lakshmi of the family. Everybody thought she was special, and her parents and her family. And she died in childbirth when Charji was 5. She died, his sister was born, and I guess there's some interference. The mic is not sitting well today. She died when he was, shortly after being born. And so, where am I? I've lost my place here. And so, the Lakshmi, the women are considered the wealth of the family, and also the spiritual wealth, and some of the principles of motherhood I've talked about in other videos comes from this. She brings with her not only the light and illumination, but the spiritual wealth. The Indian tradition debars a human being from performing many of the sacred Vedic rites when he has no wife to sit by his side. They have to be done together. The whole, you see the no part. So the respect and, in fact, the worship of female is enormous in the Indian tradition. Therefore, we say that they should be induced to love their husbands and to look after their families. It is to protect what we in India think of as the nucleus of society, the nucleus of the germinating power of ethics, of morality, of spiritual aspiration, the family. Where the family is broken, nothing is possible. I mean, you have to think over this, to see it in our own lives, to see it in your own lives, to see it in the lives of others. I often say that to see it in your own lives and see it in the lives of others. And I remembered I heard it from Chargy, and somehow it became embedded. And I often say that in my videos. I just said it the other day. And then I hadn't picked up this book in about 3 months because I guess got out of habit of doing it. I was reading a few pages every day and savoring it. And then because of just getting busy and all these things. But I was able to pick this up on Sunday. Today's Monday. And I read that. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's where I heard it, right? It's become so much a part of the way I talk about things, that when you can see things in your own lives and see them in the lives of other people. I mean, you have to think over this to see it in your own life, see it in the lives of others. When families are shattered, everything goes. So to preserve the family intact and yet impart spirituality to the women, because men, they are sowers of the seed. For them, nothing is important. If the male one day becomes so attached to spirituality that he must have spiritual progress whether he loses everything, he is prepared for it. Renunciation is much easier. Renunciation is easy for the male. For the female, it's very difficult. But when they make this mistake of denigrating the family, neglecting the family, and run off after the spiritual tradition, they are making a mistake too in the opposite direction. So Babaji has said, for women, there are no specific times for meditation. They can sit when they choose, even when they cook. Babaji said if they cook in the thought they're cooking for the divine, under the orders of the divine, then the divine is going to eat it. It is sufficient for them. You see, the spiritual tradition is enormously generous when women are concerned, very flexible, very understanding the compulsions under which women exist, not only today, but for eons past. They have always been the playthings of men, you see, misused by men, exploited by men, corrupted by men. Here, the spiritual tradition of Sahaj Marg seeks to protect the family, and therefore the women of the family, ennoble her, raise her, elevate her to the status that she really enjoys, that of the mother, that of the commander of the inner existence. In India, the woman is the undisputed queen of the household, whether she may appear to be outside, whatever she may appear to be outside. Again, the European, with all their little understanding of social conventions, when they come to India and see the wife walking behind the husband, they say, what is this? It's like slaves. They don't walk together, hand in hand, like we do in Europe, but we laugh at the Westerners when they hug and laugh and kiss each other on the street, and we say, what is this, like dogs mating on the streets? Excuse me, but this is the impression. You must understand why the wife walks behind the husband, because he, as the male dominating force, walks ahead of her to protect her. The woman follows. It is always the tradition. In the house, the woman, even today, the queen of the house, she is called the Gira Lakshmi, the Lakshmi of the house. Next, the point 8e. This is again in bold. E. Women should not be allowed to meditate upon the form of the teacher or preceptor. The preceptor should be careful that no personal attachment is allowed to develop in her for the preceptor. For this purpose, here is a way of doing it. For this purpose, women can meditate, he laughs, on the form of the husband's laughter from the audience. But it's not written here, and you won't find it written in the copy. But Master always said, only if he is deserving. The same principle, you see, that the form upon which we meditate should deserve the attention from us. A better course for women should be to meditate at the point of the heart, here thinking that she is meditating on him who is all-pervading. You see, therefore, there is a way of meditating upon the Master, but instead of adopting the form, think of him as the all-pervading and meditate, and who is pervading in her husband too. So you see, you bring in, the union of all-pervading and the husband as a possible entity. You see, so that the husband is not divorced in your thought from the Master. You're able to think of both simultaneously, meditating on him who is all-pervading and pervading in the husband too, is the fact that the Almighty is pervading in the husband too, whatever he may be today. And again in bold, and who is pervading in her husband too. This will strengthen the Paratravata Dharma of the woman, the Dharma of the leading a chaste life. Incidentally, it was also benefit the husband because he is a part of her meditation. So I think, in denying the meditation in the form of the Master, to the women, master has given in its place a better technique for the women. Okay, so this was something he talked about earlier when he covered meditation on the form of the master. And I don't really need to talk about that right now because there is no master in gratefulness meditation. But there was times where people, the form of the master, the full form of the master would appear in their hearts. And instead of meditating on divine light, you would meditate on the form of the master, and that eventually fades as well. And, there's these various things. But for women, it's problematic, or could be problematic. Some women did it anyway. But it's problematic in the sense that as long as it's spiritual, it's fine. But if she falls in love with the master or whatever that is, that women have more of a chance of doing that. And it becomes, problematic for her. And then it's, and that's why this is being said here. Okay, so you can hear the interference. I forgot to have mic back in my hand. They have these things that you can hold the mic with. I need to get one. And then I can, do these things more easily. I very seldom read, so it's not been a big issue. But, the mic was, I think I was a little bit moving around too much. Or maybe every time it's like this and I just don't listen to it back. But anyways, these are all interesting things, and just, I wanted to read the middle part and this idea that, women are, their hearts open when they do spirituality, like when they do the Sahaj Marg system. The cleaning and transmission opens everybody's heart. And for women, they have more predisposition to falling in love, loving and also attachment. They can fall in love with the preceptor or the master when there's really just, this is, they feel the love, the divine love that's coming through them. They're just conduits, right? And so, and it's just in general, these are things to be aware of, the whole idea of a woman's heart being more sensitive. And, there's a need to be able to be detached and renounce things in the Sahaj Marg system or any spiritual system. And women have more difficulty with that, even though they have a head start, because they're much more naturally spiritual than men. They're naturally more connected to God and love. They're more loving, and they have all these, qualities. I mean, partly it's because of being a mother, and also partly it's just how women are made. Women are usually better healers. They're more in tune with nature and intuition and things, but also have to understand the need for a sense of being able to do your duty, be able to perform your duties just like a husband does. Doing your work and your family stuff and everything, but also remaining connected to God. Loving God singularly. Where women will love lots of people, women have more of a capacity to love more and more people. Where, a person who gets a man who ends up becoming spiritual, his love can be centered towards God in a way that gets 100% of the focus, right? We have this Papillon named Buddy, and my wife had a Papillon. She had Farley when we got together, who was a female. But she had a Papillon named Zazu, who was a male Papillon. And we got our Papillon Buddy. She said that the Papillons are the males get very attached to one person. And Buddy is the attachments towards me. I took him out to walk, and, he sort of bonded with me. I think he was, there was an older couple that was breeding them. And I don't think they took very good care of the dogs. They were show dogs, but I questioned some of the things. Buddy seems to have some neurotic issues. There was 13 other dogs there. And I thought he might have been a little bit, bullied by the older Papillons. But Buddy immediately formed an attachment with me. And, sometimes we talk about, I'm his support human. Like I'm his emotional support human. Like people have emotional support animals. So... but it's interesting that the male dogs have an attachment where both Farley and Tulsi are clearly attached to everyone in the family sort of equally. Maybe if you're with them more, I mean, I spend the most time with the dogs. But, Tulsi is just friendly, and Buddy's still friendly with everybody, but it's a little bit different. And so, there's that kind of element that is a part of the spiritual world and can love multiple people, and when their hearts open up, they're more at risk. I mean, there's, protection for these things, but being aware of it because of the nature of the Sahaj Marg system where, people have closed their hearts up and they're, maybe they've been heartbroken or, have issues, whatever it might be. And yet, the heart can open up through the Sahaj Marg system, and then there's a vulnerability there for both men and women, but, more so for women. Anyways, I thought I would include this in the Journey series, and also I'll post this in a separate video on gratefulness meditation. And that's it for now. I think I'll talk about this again maybe some other time, but that's good for now. Okay, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely points for the Apocalaughs. In the Ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.